Back tonight on In Focus, Defense Minister Thandi Modise raised eyebrows when she attended the three-day Moscow conference on international security over the weekend. This comes amid a backlash from South Africa's Ukrainian community and the official opposition parties. While there, Modise told 35 countries in attendance that Pretoria did not seek to take what she called a popular stance on the war in Ukraine, but to put conflict resolution at the center of all deliberations on global security. She maintained that South Africa chose mediation and peace. Joining us now to share his perspective on the controversial trip is Africa-Asia analyst Thembisa Fakude. Good to have you with us. Good evening, sir, and thank you for your time. I mean, the trip in itself and taking the decision to go to this conference in Moscow, one would say this was coming at the back already of having met here in South Africa with the US's Anthony Blinken. So was this, in a sense, a way of the defense minister trying to create balance, or is it just a reflection of our confused international relations policy?
Well, there are two possible answers. One is we're not quite sure when the invitation was sent. Was it before before February when the war in Ukraine started, or after that? So that's the first question, whether this was an invitation was sent before or not. The other possible answer, of course, is trying to balance the visit of Anthony Blinken, who visited South Africa. You remember at the same time, or just a couple of days before, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, visited Egypt, Ethiopia, and Uganda. So one at the time thought South Africa was improving in its stance on Ukraine and Russia by not having Sergei Lavrov visiting South Africa. Instead, we had Anthony Blinken visiting South Africa. But of course, the surprise came this week when the defense minister Thandi Modise visited went to Russia to that conference. So we don't know when the invitation came to her, or whether South Africa is really trying to balance the act. But I think the other important thing to mention is that these conferences do take place, and there are quite a number of security conferences that take place. Often they are not government platforms at which decisions are made, but there are more talk shops. Think tanks are often invited, academics and journalists. My favorite one, for example, is a Munich conference, which also takes place in Germany every year, and it's there where you discuss geopolitics, you discuss the security issues, but they're not platforms where governments go and sign bilaterals or businesses of governments. They're more of talking platforms, talk shops, where the politicians, academics, and journalists go and discuss issues that impact the world. And one will believe that this one as well is one of those conferences that merely talk shops and basically exchanging discussions about what's going on around the world and how to go about tackling them. Is more about academic papers and academic positions presented by politicians, academics, and think tanks.
But she seemed to have taken the opportunity at least to reiterate and cement South Africa's stance and position on the resolution of the conflict in the Ukraine. Do you think she was believed in any way in the position that she took, that South Africa is choosing this particular route, mediation and peace, is what she says, by those 35 countries in attendance?
Well, I don't think so. I think at the moment South Africa is viewed as a country that's sitting on a fence, but importantly, a country that's having a very confused foreign policy positions on matters that impact the world. We have been flip-flopping on a number of occasions, particularly this one on Ukraine, where you have South Africa abstaining, and at the same time you have the president singing from a different hymn book, and the Ministry of International Affairs and Cooperation, DERCO, International Relations Corporation, DERCO, also singing from a different tune. But to me, the visit of Anthony Blinken indicated that South Africa is taking a different position in this regard. The fact that Sergei Lavrov did not come to South Africa. Rather, they've decided on a softer approach of attending a conference. It suggests that at least the president is looking at siding, at least this time around, with the West when it comes to Ukraine. And South Africa will continue, of course, insisting that they are for peace. But it's very difficult to spin your way out of such blunders that are coming one after the other.
Now, of course, her remarks come when they were loading a number of ships. In fact, I think one is already set sail with some grain that is heading for the African continent. This is a deal that is regarded by South Africa and the AU, among others, as a first step towards negotiating a settlement. Do you believe that is the case?
No, I don't think so. I think South Africa, given our history and given the position of taking the past on matters of justice and aggression by the known bullies of the world, we should have taken a much more stronger stance on Ukraine. Here you are, a country being invaded, and we're given reasons that do not make sense. One of them was that the Russians wanted to go and crush the Semitism, notwithstanding that the president of Ukraine is a Jew himself, did not make sense. So we had all these strings of nonsensical reasons that were given why Russia went to Ukraine in the first place, which was a pretext. And one would have expected that South Africa, given our history and position in the world, would have outright condemned that position by Russia, but we didn't. And now we find ourselves having to justify certain positions and using shipment, which were not even supposed to be stopped in the first place from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean, feeding the world. That it's a sign of a positive sign by Russia that it means business, and South Africa suddenly is taking advantage of those low-hanging political, arsenal to justify its position. And I think it's one step a bit too late. South Africa should have taken a position from the onset that it was unjust and not right for Russia to have invaded Ukraine.
Is Russia to be believed that it is certainly setting us on a better path of improved mechanisms of international security, or maybe even creating new ones? It's certainly creating or seemingly creating a new world power. That is certainly what they are trying to create.
I'm not quite sure whether we want to be part of Russia, given that they are very aggressive and hostile towards dissent, towards basic freedoms, including freedom of expression. We've had a number of journalists that are jailed and a number of journalists that have suddenly disappeared, and some of them have been killed. So I'm not quite sure whether it's a right alliance that all of us should be looking at aligning ourselves with. So I don't believe Russia. Russia has been a violator of basic human rights, suppressor of dissent within Russia. And South Africa should take a very clear position, because we are known throughout the world as a country that stands for justice, as a country that stands for democracy and promotion of basic human rights across the world. But the fact that we continue being part of the coalition and the bloc of countries known as BRICS is in itself a problem, because if you look at the current members or leaders in BRICS, they include all the possible despots, whether it's Modi of India, who continues to suppress the Muslims in there and destroying their homes in collective punishment, or it's Vladimir Putin, who has gone on to invade another country, or Xi Jinping, who continues to suppress the rights of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang and Hong Kong and Tibet. So we are in a very strange coalition, and I think Russia seeks to control BRICS, and as you know, they've opened invitation now to other countries to join in.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure whether we want to be part of that bloc or the emerging powers around the world if we were to choose sides. And I think we need to be careful on how we make the decision, given the crimes that I've just mentioned associated with these leaders, or the new emerging leaders of this new bloc that seeks to determine the new world order.
Now, both the South African Minister of International Relations, Naledi Pandor, and the incoming ambassador to South Africa, the United States ambassador to South Africa, are in agreement. In fact, what do you make of this statement from both, that even though South Africa and the U.S. have differing views on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but we are committed to strengthening bilateral cooperations? What does that tell us about where the U.S. is as far as how they are viewing South Africa's sitting on the fence position?
Well, I think there are a lot of private discussions that are taking place, and South Africa is trying to present a very independent, brave face amidst a confused foreign policy. It's very clear that South Africa cannot survive without the United States. We are addicted to United States products and services, and our relationship with the United States is much more stronger, and particularly when it comes to economic dealings between the two countries. So South Africa will remain important to the United States, and the United States will also continue regarding South Africa as an important partner. However, having said that, our foreign policy does not necessarily articulate that. At best, it articulates a very confused policy, notwithstanding that behind the scene, the politicians act in a different way. I mean, we see what happened, or we saw what happened between Anthony Blinken and Naledi Pandor, but what we've been hearing from Naledi Pandor over the past couple of months regarding Russia has been, to an extent, embarrassing for to many of us. And now we have Minister Thandi Modise in Russia, notwithstanding what I've said in my opening, that it's just a conference. It's not necessarily country bilateral or multilateral meetings with different countries of the world. Is more of a talk shop. But still, one would have thought that given the sensitive nature of what's going on at the moment between the Ukrainians and the Russians, Thandi Modise would have rather come up with an excuse of not attending that conference. But again, we do understand that South Africa, somehow they found it prudent for them to send a high-ranking official from South Africa to attend that conference, notwithstanding, of course, that this would have, I mean, I've been, before this interview, I've been reading a number of articles, and this has been widely reported, including by some international media organizations, about how South Africa continues to align itself with Russia, notwithstanding, of course, that South Africa, perhaps behind the scene, might have a different understanding or meaning to Thandi Modise's visit to Russia. MPs
have called this poor judgment. Do you think South Africa will live to regret this decision?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's quite, you know, we have so many voices, and the DEDCO voices has always been independent, particularly that of Naledi Pandor. Notwithstanding sometimes that you want to detect some sort of contradictions between the presidency and DEDCO on matters of foreign affairs. And I think this time around is something similar. You're likely to hear President Cyril Ramaphosa, when caught off guard, uttering a different position on why he decided, or the Minister of Defense decided to attend that conference.
Thembisa Fakude, much appreciated. Thank you very much for your time.